Okay, welcome back. This is the last video that I'm going to post for week 5, and what I'm doing here is going over the thesis development, because this week we'll be doing thesis statement peer reviews, and so there will be a block, a discussion board actually, where you can submit your thesis, and that'll be homework for week 5, to submit that thesis and kind of have it workshopped by everybody so that you can have suggestions and things while you're working on creating your rough draft. And since your rough draft is basically a giant explanation and a giant piece of support supporting your thesis, hopefully that will help. So as you guys started with the reflective narratives, the same thing goes for your analysis essay whenever you're developing your thesis. The first thing I always do is start with the SOAR acronym. You have your subject, you have your opinion, you have some sort of action that your paper is trying to achieve, and then you have a reason behind that. Now, a lot of students always ask me, do these have to go in order? Well, not really, because these are just a way for you to, these words in this acronym are really only just a way for you to plan what it is that you're trying to develop. So for instance, let's say that we are talking about abortion. Again, I mean, just because I don't have an obsession with abortion, I've just been using it for the videos, so I'm continuing my thought train. Since these videos are recorded probably 2 minutes apart. So, subject is just going to be abortion. The opinion, you're going to actually try and keep your opinion out of it for right now, and your opinion is that, more or less, people should learn, because that's what you want them to do. You're trying to inform them of both sides of the argument so that they can make an informed decision. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to inform them. My screen shut off. Now, you can pretty well mark that one out for now. There are ways to go about embedding that in your thesis, because it is an option to talk about your opinion beforehand, give both sides of the argument, and then also kind of go back to your opinion and say, in light of all this evidence, this is why I've always believed that abortion is bad or abortion is good or whatever. But for this case, this example, I'm going to show you a way to not use the opinion in hopes that it'll make it a little easier. So, go ahead and take out the opinion for now, because the analysis essay really doesn't need one. Instead, what we need to think about is our action. What is this action? What is this paper trying to achieve? Is it trying to detail? Is it trying to persuade? Is it trying to inform? In this case, I think one of the better verbs to use would be outline or inform. Because essentially that's what you're doing. You're providing this information so that you can outline both sides of the argument. Or you're trying to inform the reader of both sides of the argument. So those are the two that I would suggest, but you can choose your own, and this will make a little bit more sense when we plug it all together. Now the reason. Why are we talking about abortion? Why are we talking about whatever social issue that you have? That is your reason for this thesis. Because try to stay away from the generic ones like, it's important. Well, of course it's important. That's why you're doing it. You shouldn't be writing about anything if it's not important. More so, try to think of an impact. If people don't know about what you're about to tell them, what's the impact? Well, they'll be ill-informed. They might make the wrong decision. They might support killing babies. You know, whatever it might be, that's what you're going to put as your reason. What happens if they don't know about both sides of the argument? What happens if they don't know what you're about to tell them? That's the reason for writing this essay. So in this case, we'll say the reason for writing this essay is to avoid bad decisions, or avoid decisions that you, well, we don't want to use the word you, so let's think about that in third person, that teens will regret. So something particular about this thesis is the fact that now I've identified teens. So in doing this, I've also identified my audience. My audience are teens that might be faced with the choice of abortion or not. So once we start plugging this all together, now we start coming up with our thesis. And again, I always start with the purpose of this essay is. If you want to reword it afterwards, that's fine, but it helps you get started. So is to, and this is where the action fits in. What is our action? Outline, inform. Well, in this case, I'm going to go with outline. Is to outline the opposing views, and we can kind of check that off because we did that. We got our action in there. That's done. On abortion. Check that off. We've now talked about our subject. In order to help teens avoid making decisions, making sure my screen's not going to go black, that they will regret. And so therein becomes my thesis, because now I've also checked off my reason. And that becomes a pretty decent thesis. The purpose of this essay is to outline the opposing views on abortion in order to help teens avoid making decisions that they will regret. And so that's an easy way to kind of come up with your thesis. Now, if you want to reword it, you don't have to. I'm okay with you starting your thesis like this. The purpose of this essay is to outline, because that's what scholars do whenever they do research-based essays. Whenever you read an abstract or you read an article where someone maybe studied the effects, in my case, of video games on student learning in the classroom. If we did that, you'll see most of us started off with the purpose of this essay, or the purpose of this research, or the purpose of this study is to do that. And so that is perfectly viable for this essay, especially. If you want to change it to something that flows a little better, sounds a little less academic, because remember, you are actually writing to teens in this case. I mean, not you. Everyone's not going to be writing to teens, but this one, because it labels teens, that is something to think about. Our rhetorical strategy might not work very well if we have this dry academic verbiage, this dry academic speak, and we're trying to talk to teens. That probably wouldn't be a good idea. So for this thesis, it probably would be a good idea to make it flow a little better. But you don't have to. I'm not going to take points off for anybody that uses this framework, because I'd like to get you to get the practice. So that is all I have for writing your thesis. The big thing here is in this one, you don't need an opinion, because you are just simply outlining both sides of the argument based on whatever subject you choose. And then once you have it all outlined, put it into a sentence that fills in the blank of the purpose of this essay is to. And once you have that, once you have all that together, you have a viable thesis and you can begin writing. One thing to remember is after you get your thesis written for your analysis essay, you'll be submitting it to the discussion board that'll be found in the week 5 content. So other than that, be sure you're asking questions and have a good rest of your week.